the message will be good.
Yeah. Are we recording? Brilliant. All right, Braulio, welcome to the Keep in Focus podcast. It's a pleasure to have you. I've been excited for you to come on this podcast. We've got to know each other very well over the last few months, or year or so now, really. This podcast is all about the journey to success. So if I was to ask you, where does your journey to success start? How would you answer that question?
That's actually a very good question, Joe. And listen, just before I answer, it's been a pleasure, get to know you better, been training and discussing life in general, and especially having Jiu-Jitsu in common. We kind of get each other really well. And I was really excited as well to share a little bit of what my experience has been throughout my journey. And the journey for the success, I believe that's the first thing that, at least in my experience, was a differential, was the honesty with myself, by understanding and accepting the scenario that you were at, of course, knowing what I would love to achieve, right? I think one thing that's on my success journey in the Jiu-Jitsu level, everything started with myself accepting me in the area that I was at, even though I am from Brazil. I'm from Recife, the northeast of Brazil. A lot of people think Jiu-Jitsu is everywhere in Brazil, which is quite true right now. But when I started, there was not even a black belt around my state. The closest black belt was about 2.5 hours away by airplane. There was a bunch of white belts, one blue belt that had Jiu-Jitsu 10 months more Jiu-Jitsu than I had when I started, and a coach that left after 1.5 years. And that was our group that we carry on throughout, So, and once you jump into a sport that has already previously developed throughout Rio de Janeiro, Manaus in Amazon, São Paulo, which there was already world champions, and then when you are in a very small spectrum of that sport, for you to be able to move up the ladder, there are a few things that you gotta have to take into terms. And that's when it comes to the honesty. Sometimes you can always keep blaming the world for not having that kind of knowledge. Oh, I wish I could have that knowledge. But listen, you don't have. So what do? You're going to be spending your time talking about what you don't have, or focus and accept what you've got, appreciate what you've got, and try to do your best with what you've got to improve in the area on the level that you can. I think this is the first step, is the honesty with yourself. Accept the situation in the scenario that you're at. Understand what you're fighting for. In my case, became a fighting system, but it had to, once you have passion for something, you are more likely to go through the ups and downs in life, because life there's a lot of hurdles in life, and then when I look back, you can connect all that, and for you to, when everything is good, it doesn't matter what you do really. It's good, it's all fun, right? But when things, when thing goes out of what you expect, or things that you go out of plan, what's gonna get you through it is you're gonna have a better chance if you are related to what you have the passion for. Because if you have a passion for something, it doesn't matter if it's on the good day or on the bad day, there's a passion you go through because there's something that you really enjoy in doing it, and this was one of my main dilemma that I was fighting for up until I made my commitment. Because of course you got to be cautious. At least on myself, I had both sides of my family was very focused on the academic world. I was the first grandson of both families, and I was the first one that ended up going through the sports. I didn't have no reference in the sports in my both families. So I was always bringing the academic world parallel up until I had to choose, and that choice doesn't come easy. It's very uncertain. You don't know what's the future gonna hold. But when I start my academic world, like I wanted to have a diploma so I can have something, so I can build my family, so I can make my money, so I can live and build my family and then live. And if you don't have in Brazil a degree, it's very unlikely that he'll be able to achieve that. So I pushed that. I started doing production engineering, not because I loved production engineering, but because it was some degree that would keep me safe money-wise. So it was purely for the money. And I started recognizing things that maybe when on the ups and downs of lives, when on the downside, if I was doing something that I didn't have that passion, or if I was doing just because of the money, I felt that I would be very frustrated. And that was my main decision. My dilemma was, okay, I'm doing production engineering, very prospectable job, but I will be doing something that I not necessarily really like, but for the money. But also I do jiu-jitsu, which there's no money whatsoever, but I'm so happy doing it, and then
It's been a crazy decision because jiu-jitsu, I know we've spoken about this a few times, but jiu-jitsu is not the sport that it is now.
No, by far.
And, when you started, you've gone on to achieve basically every accolade that there is to achieve in the sport. But when you started doing it and you were making that decision between a professional career and a sports career, it wasn't like you were going to be a boxer or a football player. You kind of what you wanted. You have a passion for football as well, don't you?
Yes, I did. I wanted.
But, jiu-jitsu and pursuing that and going after that passion must have felt super high risk, but the right thing to do at the time.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I wanted to be a footballer first. I wanted to be an athlete. I've always had that passion for sports. I love the idea of being an athlete, because you are in a very good environment. You always try to test in yourself. You try to better yourself.
Where do you think that came from?
I don't know. I think my natural, I'm always loved to run around, and I found fun to do sports, and when you grow, saying like, no, job is not fun, is commitment, because it's your responsibility to go, but why cannot be fun, and I have a little difficulties of I don't have a difficulty of learning. I have difficulty of reading because I'm a little dyslexic, so I didn't have that attraction to go back from school, go back to the house and try to spend time reading, but I had that desire to have fun, to play with my mates. I did all the kind of sport that's out there, and I've always been very attracted by competition. I'm a competitive person. That's when it comes down to the honesty with yourself. I understood from the early age that I am a competitor. I want to do something that challenge me, and I want to go to the route that's going to put me in a healthy lifestyle. That was it. I surfed, I played ping pong, I played basketball, volleyball, beach volleyball, swimming, you name it, football. And I felt that I could be something, but I have to get the right thing on the right time. So I put a goal. Someone told me, Braulio, look, if you're not being chosen by an academy in football by 17 years old, you're not going to make it as a footballer. But I really wanted to be a footballer. But when I got 16, I got so many disappointments on that journey with the clicking groups at football that is in Brazil. And I got to the point that I was like, man, like 16 years old. I'm not going to wait until 17 to be called. I need to start shifting now, because otherwise I'm going to be a little late for another sport. That's when I saw the Olympics in 96. In 96, the Olympics where one of our judo fighters in Brazil got third in the Atlanta Olympics. And that got me the inspiration back, because I've done judo for a year or so before, and I was competing. I loved it, but something that my coach at the time, he passed away in an accident. That's when I migrated to football, was something that I, within sport. And I had that attraction for the glory of being the champion. I had that, you know what I mean? And it's something that I felt that I could achieve, you know. And with that mind, always be on my head to be in a career mode of the sports. But it felt very far away from possibilities of going to do that for the money. In Jiu-Jitsu, like people who was dealing with Jiu-Jitsu at the time, Jiu-Jitsu was just a hobby. There was just like a second work. Like they have the main work and they do Jiu-Jitsu and they paid from the work to be able to run the academy. So it wasn't something for the money. But I try to funnel my options and I start realizing that I would rather spend time doing Jiu-Jitsu. That's something that I really love it, that I didn't feel like I was wasting my time, because I was enjoying so much and learning from it as a self-defense. I was hanging out with my friends and I was learning something new all the time and becoming better every day. And I was competing and I could see my development going on. And whereas for the production engineering was mainly because I had to, for the money. And then I started realizing, okay, I've never been so greedy. I was brought up in a way to be very content with what you've got. And I would rather be, at that time I was sick, that main decisions when I was 22 years old. I already felt my potential. I had won some majors, tournaments by then. And I said, look, man, I already done enough here to be happy with what I've been doing. And if I invest more time doing this, I'm sure I will be able to get even better. And by doing that, I will be doing something that I really love it. And my argument with my dad for him to let me come and try here, the first trip to London in 2002, was like, then he goes, bro, you're going to leave production engineering for Jiu-Jitsu. How are you going to leave? How are you going to build your family? What are you going to do? I said, Dad, look, I really love Jiu-Jitsu. And I encountered myself. I found myself within. And I've already done enough that showed me that if I pursue that, I will be at least better than I have been so far. And if I do something well, it doesn't matter what you do. You're always going to have an amount of people that will appreciate what you do, you know. And Jiu-Jitsu is a very skillful the sport, and that is very needed for the normal day life. So it's good for the self-defense. It's good for you, for your exercise. You know, you learn something new. It's good for socializing. So that is something about Jiu-Jitsu that I really felt strong about. And I told him that if you get the best gardener in the world, he's fine. Maybe Joseph across the road, he's not doing good because he's stuck here, maybe because he's not the best. But the best one in the world, he's okay. He's making a living with gardening. If you get the best white wall painter on the street in the world, he's all right. Maybe Pedro across the road is not doing so well, but if you get the best one in the world, he's okay. He's making a living, and he's doing something that, if he loves it, he's living the life. And I start feeling this, you know, and I said, you know what, I want to be the best in the world, even if I don't achieve being the best in the world, but if I am is better than what I have been, I can encounter enough people that will be interested to learn what I know that I'm developing for the last few years. And this would be enough for me. And then when I came to UK, that was the release, the security of what my choice was done was right, because I didn't cancel my university. I just paused for 6 months, just in case. What if it didn't work? I was careful, you know. So at the time, back then, I used to have a half of a scholarship on my university through Jiu-Jitsu. I was a brown belt then. I had the other half, I had to work for it. So I used to work from 7 o'clock in the morning until mid 12:30 in the afternoon to pay half of the scholarship of the production engineering. And then I used to go back home, have my lunch, get to do my homework, and then I used to do the jiu-jitsu for 1.5 hours. And then from the academy, I used to go to the university to study production engineering up until 10:30 in the night. And then I used to teach 3 times a week a small group of the university people that the guy who helped me in the university, the owner, he gave me the scholarship. He gave me this possibility because that's the only way that I could actually make some money. So I had a group of 8, 10 people that I used to teach from 11 until midnight. And then by the time I get home, it's at 12:45 to wake up again, 6 to be able to go to the... And so my routine was very intense. And still, I was able to succeed in some of the competitions. In my mind, I was imagine if I invest my time only for jiu-jitsu, doing something that I love, and I could put more time into it. And then I came here for the first time. For the first time in my career, I spent 2 months only doing things for jiu-jitsu. I was teaching jiu-jitsu, I was training jiu-jitsu, and for the first time I was working out to help my jiu-jitsu. Within 2 months, I went to compete at the Pan American Championships, and I won weight in absolute in the brown belt, which is a major. And that was the reaffirmation that my choice was right. And then when that happened, and already with the group of people that I was hanging out here in Birmingham, and I already had a community that loved jiu-jitsu and that they appreciate jiu-jitsu and appreciate someone with that passion that I had. Therefore, I was able to make my humble living, and I was happy. You know, I never expect that in 2023 we would be here talking about my career in jiu-jitsu. One thing that I knew is that I was doing something that I really had the passion, so I was committed to give my all. And then when you are committed to give your all, you most likely you're going to do that thing well. And if you do something well, there will be people who appreciate that thing that will appreciate and then you'll be able to make a living out of it. And that's the secret, I think.
And like, so that moment where it was like, okay, I've got 2 months where all I'm doing is focusing on jiu-jitsu. So was that when you kind of connected with Gracie Barra as an organization, or were you connected before that? Because you're not a Gracie, you've got your own profile in your own right, but you are under the Gracie banner as like a big advocate for the clubs, and it's like huge club internationally. So yeah, when did that connection with Gracie Barra come in?
That is so funny. My life is quite a lot of coincidence happen. You know, my dad, he couldn't afford a house, or he didn't have a car, and we used to rent. And the contracts of the rent is every 3 years. So every 3 years, we tend to move places, right? And then in this, one of the times that I was living with my grandma and my family at my grandma's house, because I was always hyper, I didn't have nobody around me to play because I was the oldest of the siblings. My brother was the closest to me, which is 4.5 years older I am. So basically, by the time I was 9 years old, my brother was like, 5. And that's not the same kind of games we play. So I was quite on my own all the time. So my dad put me to train judo for the first time when I was 9 years old. So I started developing, okay, that's good, I like it, fighting. I was very into competition, blah, blah, blah. And I started developing my journey in the martial arts. Then my dad rented a place that was far from my grandma's house. And therefore, I was going to study in a different place. I was already used to that shift. And I remember my first day at school, I was very excited to meet the people, excited for the break, where I'm going to catch up with all the kids. And then there was a kid that called my attention because he was very popular already, because he already been studying that school since primary school. And then he's also local all his life in that place, completely different environment that I was brought in. I was always moving places, so I never had a solid crew. So he already was in the crew. He was a guy. He was a good-looking guy. Everyone all over him. His father's a surfer. The place was close to the beach, so I started living by the beach, which was great. And then he walked out towards me. Hey, you new here, right? I said, yeah. And yeah, what's your name? I said, oh, my name is Braulio. And then, oh man, that's good. Let me show you the school. I said, oh my God, that guy, such a nice guy. He didn't have to do that. So I felt so included already on the very first day at school. And then we started to get to talk about. And I asked, do you guys have any judo here? Because I came from another school and I like to do judo. He goes, mate, I do judo. I said, no way. So that was a very good click. Fernando, his friend, still friends out. So then I started training judo then, right? Jiu-jitsu out of boundaries, don't even know what jiu-jitsu is all about. And then we trained for 2 years. We competed together. He was advanced. He was older than me. So I used to get inspired by him. And then our professor, our coach, died in an accident. So then we got demotivated. My dad couldn't bring me to train in another school to train jiu-jitsu. And then I started doing football with that dream, whatever, doing something, and then carry on. In 96, when I had the epiphany watching the Olympics, I said, you know what, I'm going to start training judo again. It's something that I've done before, and I liked it. Football is not going to work. 16 years old, nobody called me for the academy. I'm going to go for football, for judo, something that I felt it. And then, by this time, there was a guy that I used to fight really hard when I was 11 years old. I used to see him by 15 years old. He's on the sports channel on his black belt, going to train with the Brazilian team. I said, man, that could be me. This is also my head, And then I contacted Fernando. I said, Fernando, man, let's train judo again. He goes, Braulio, I'm training jiu-jitsu. I said, what? What is this? I don't want to do MMA and stuff. No. Jiu-jitsu is like judo, but on the ground. I said, oh, okay. Maybe I can go and check it out if it's something that can similar to judo, because I'm already committed to go through judo to the Olympics. That's what I wanted. Maybe I'll try jiu-jitsu to help my judo. And then I went to the club called Freestyle. And then Fernando brought me that, and I love jiu-jitsu. I said, oh, this actually can be something that can help my judo. And then we started training. I started training jiu-jitsu to help, blah, blah, blah. And Fernando, still the same popular guy, right? And then there was this family from Rio that moved to Recife, and that this beautiful girl called Deborah, and he straight away on her, and started being girlfriends and boyfriends with her. And her brother was a Brazilian champion at a juvenile as a blue belt from Rio. And he was on our classroom. I go, caramba, man, look how cool is that? And guess what? He's from Gracie Barra. And that year, 97, Fernando went to compete the Worlds in Rio. And he brought the team from the freestyle and then connected with Carlos Gracie Jr. That then the correlation became with the Gracie Barra. And then we changed freestyle for Gracie Barra. We became an affiliated of Gracie Barra, and the coach used to go once a year to connect. And then I started traveling to compete. And then by this time, I already forgot about judo to be the main. I felt that jiu-jitsu was in a good wave, that I could be the champion that I've always wanted because it's something new. And I started judo, this training judo to help my jiu-jitsu. And that connection with 97, I wasn't sure if that little freestyle school without a black belt was actually the jiu-jitsu of the Royce Gracie that I saw in UFC. Is it that really or not? And then when I traveled for the first time in 97, when I met Carlos Gracie Jr., which was the very first Gracie that I ever met, I was starstruck. And then I remember losing the first fight at the Brazilian Championships tournament that we went together. Fernando got third. And then I lost my first fight, but before I came back on Monday night, I wanted to go Monday morning to get as much as possible to learn, to connect. And then I saw Carlos Gracie Jr. there in the academy again. I said, oh my God, man, he's here doing the class. Imagine if he sees me training or whatever. hey, am I doing the real jiu-jitsu? I just lost my first fight. Is that real? I don't know. Let's see. And he put me to train with the guy that I trained well, and he called me to the side. And he goes, hey, chap, what's your name? I said, my name is Braulio. I said, where are you from? I'm from Recife. Hey, there's something about you, man. Don't stop training. When you go back home, try to choose your right people to hang out with. Focus on being as good as you could be. And that talked to me in a way that very similar to how my dad always spoke to me. And that connects with my subject. That was the connection I had with jiu-jitsu, with the son of the creator telling me this as a 16 years old. I never told that thing until I was a 2 times world champ as a black belt, because I feared that if I said something to anybody, people wouldn't believe. They'll take me for a joke. But it didn't matter for them. It mattered to me. So that talk on Monday after the tournament, just before I traveled back, meant a lot more than any medal that I could have received on that weekend, because that token stayed with me as a fire for me to carry on, that I was doing something that was going to lead to the right thing. Because if someone like Carlos Gracie Jr. telling me that, what more motivation you need? Skips on down the line, at that, I'm the head professor of the Gracie Barra Global online, so he's always been a visionary, and the Gracie Barras, at the time, there was like maybe 4 Gracie Barras in Brazil at that time, and we became one of them, and then we developed the relationships, and then Roger Gracie became a black belt under Carlos Gracie Jr., which is his nephew. I connected with Roger on those trips. Since when we were blue belt, I didn't know he was Gracie. We connected, became very good training partners, and it appeared this opportunity for me to come to London. And coincidentally, Roger was coming the same period to London. And then it just a lot of coincidence or not, it led to me to come to London. And Roger was in London because his dad, Mauricio Gomes, who was the first one to start the Gracie Barra UK in Birmingham, was moving from Birmingham to London at the period. So there was something missing in Birmingham. So Roger brought me for a seminar with him, where I met Andy Roberts, Rachel, and Barry Foley, and Stevie Bees. And that's where the 2 months of jiu-jitsu came for the first time, in that transfer from London to Birmingham, and I spent for 2 months. Then I went to the Panams, but the very first connection was because the same guy that made me feel included on the primary school, you know what I mean? Connects everything through Gracie Barra, that now it is what it is. It's crazy.
I feel like I've spoken to you a few times, and you've shared that story with me about meeting your friend in school who made you feel really invited, and I get the impression that's really stuck with you, because the impression that I get of the gym, I train in your gym, been there now for about 1.5 years, but that mindset of making people feel welcome when they walk in, irrespective of what their background is, what kind of person they are, whether they're, loud, quiet, whatever kind of person they are, really making people feel welcome and opening your arms to them. And you see that whenever you go into your gym, that you'll go around and you greet everybody, and I think that rubs off into the whole culture of the gym. It's quite a special thing that's happened there, because I've trained in different martial arts before. Did a bit of judo when I was younger as well, kickboxing, then went into boxing. When you go into those kinds of gyms, I think there's always an aspect of humility that comes in fighting or any kind of martial arts location. Yeah, there's because sometimes you're going to get your ass beat up, and sometimes you're going to have a good day and beat a few people up. But it's really at the core, that humility and respect of the Gracie Barra, even from the way that everybody lines up in order, and then you go around and you shake everybody's hands afterwards. I feel like there's all these little percentages of traditions that are in the way that you structure the club, which sometimes I found in boxing clubs there's quite a lot of egos floating around, you don't really see that quite as much in jiu-jitsu clubs, in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, exactly it. You know, I've always been attracted to this mindset. You know, that's why, you know, Fernando up until today, we're friends, we're childhood friends, and I rate him a lot for being that popular guy since young, and he didn't have to step up and talk to me, but he made an effort, and I know how much the impact that it costs to me on my field to be accepted within a new school that can sometimes for a kid can be a whole different universe, right? And he made me feel so comfortable that made me feel that I belong, and that it's exactly what Carlos Gracie Jr. did to me when I met him for the first time. He made me feel that I belong, and Carlos Gracie Sr. always said the beauty of what jiu-jitsu can bring to people's life. Not only the jiu-jitsu itself, but the mentality of it. You know, and Carlos Gracie Sr. is the person who developed the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, and Helio Gracie was his younger brother that was being the fighter to prove the point. But Carlos Gracie Jr. In Carlos Gracie Sr., they father son, and they have Carlos Gracie Jr. had this purpose to keep the same methodology of what his dad has developed, and that's why he cannot get much closer to the lineage, right? My master is the son of the creator. Come on, man, how many people can say that? And the connection between me and Master Carlos has a lot to do with that mindset of the inclusion, you know, with the integrity, you know, with the brotherhood and sisterhood, you know, self-development, you know, and helping people to become a better version of themselves while you try to become a better version of yourself. And that spreads around all the Gracie Barras. And of course, there are people that when I grew and I saw other people like try to go to a competition abroad, not abroad, but in another state, and come back with a third medal. We don't even want to talk to none of the lower belts because I think it was already the guy. And I remember feeling it when I was a white belt. So, man, one day I would love to have the opportunity to be a champion and to prove by my own actions that you don't need to be an asshole if just because you won something. You winning something doesn't mean that you are a better person than anybody. You know, it's just that you did well, something that you focus on, and that's it. You know, and then that mentality of being humble, of when you don't need to, I love that mindset because it's the same mindset of Fernando being the popular kid, step up and making me feel comfortable. Is the Carlos Gracie Jr. being the son of the creator, the main leader of the Gracie Barra, the biggest school in the number one school at the world at the time already there, to come and make a move to talk to that kid that he never seen before, to feel that include this kind of thing, touch people in a way that gives you such a big fire and motivation for you to continue developing and try to do the same to others, you know, because if you realize how good it is to feel, if that kid, a new school, the popular kid came, make me feel that good. Imagine if I see other kid come next year. What I would make, I say, hey, you, what's up? You're new here. I will do the same because I know how beautiful it felt and it was how important it was for my development as a kid. So I try, it's all correlated. The attraction, it's correlated to all of those, you know, appreciate each other and giving back to each other.
Yeah, it's quite an amazing story of like how much something like that can have an impact on you. And I want to ask you, as you know, you've won every accolade there is. You've gone up to, you know, the ultimate success that you can have in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitively. But beyond that, you're an innovator. You know, you've got your own Estima lock. You know, your own attack named after you, which is pretty cool. But I wanted to ask you a bit about if you hit plateaus in your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journey, because I mean, I'm on my blue belt at the moment, just become a blue belt, and I felt like I had a period at white belt where I was overconfident, and then I realized I knew absolutely nothing. Then I started to feel like it was clicking, and I was like, okay, this can work. And I kind of feel like I'm going through a wave at the moment where I feel like I'm at a bit of a plateau, and I'm trying to figure out I've got some attacks at work and I've got some positions that I'm better at. For you to have achieved what you've achieved, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, you must have experienced some plateaus on that journey. What would you say to people going through their journey, or what advice would you give for people to overcome those plateaus?
Man, look, those plateaus are very important, for everyone's journey. It's because on those plateaus, you will feel that there is no next stage. You feel that you hit a wall, that you feel that it's not enough. You don't have enough to pass the wall. And that's the beauty of the first few experiences of how much you really want it to go through or not. You know what I mean? And there are many different ways of dealing with that. But the common ground is, if you keep coming, independent of a time scale, just come, try to improve, go through that frustration, because it's not comfortable. It's something. Jiu-Jitsu is a universe, man. Like, there's so many things out there. And at the beginning, you just see first the bigger picture, then you have one little thing that connect here, the other things never connect to the other. But if I end up in that position, I can do that. But how can I be in this position that I can do what I did? And then if I don't get there, I'm floating. I have nothing, unless if I'm in this spot or in that spot. And then it's part of your search. We say in Brazil, like, if you search, you find. If you stop searching, you cannot expect to find. So it's that willpower that you need to have in you to keep coming, to try to figure it out, and at some point, it will click. And even the clicks that you expect, it was the bigger click, you feel that little click, but then when you have the real click, you go, oh my God, I understand now. But it's all, you gotta show up with the intentions to improve something, because it's like, I like to compare with my experience in exams. I remember that I didn't put as much effort in some of the exams. I wasn't super prepared, and I thought I was prepared enough just to get my average mark, and I get to the test, and I look at the test and I go, holy cow, I have no idea what this is about. I have no idea what this is about. I don't, and that flick, and I flip, and I don't know none of those answers. I don't know. And then you keep try to visit what you know about that. You start going, suddenly it takes time, and then you suddenly go, shit, okay. And then it suddenly inspires you to do the next one. Suddenly, after 1 hour test, you wrote a lot more than you expected when you just saw. Why? Because you had that frustration. You try to revisit what you studied and try to get the clicks, and then you start something, you start talking a lot, and then, no, there's nothing to do. But now I got it. That's how it is. You will find yourself in situations on the beginning that you have no idea on what you need to improve. But if you keep coming, keep revisiting, keep doing research, nowadays it's even easier because you have so much on the internet, and if you try to step this size of the steps that you can reach, that is the key. If you try to run before you know how to jog, you cannot expect to be a successful run. So it's being honest again. Accept your limitations, because everyone has attributes and flaws. Is understand that working around the flaws will always be uncomfortable. Will be to the point that people that if I try to work on the flaws of some people that I have no problems with my A game, When I start working on my flaws, you see that the guy will be just like a higher belt than you, because you try to work on something new that you're not used to. But then, like when we are growing up as babies, we before we walk, we have to crawl, and that crawling, you can see when the kids how frustrated they are. They want to stand, but they can't stand up. You want to, and then your muscles start developing. First you go and you climb up the sofa, but with your hands, if you let go of the sofa, you fall, you go, "Rah," and then you start, and then suddenly you can be standing without touching the sofa. And now I want to climb over the sofa, but I can't. That's frustration. And that's the willpower of keep trying that's going to lead you to end up understand. And it's as simple as that. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it in the end. A black belt is a white belt that never gives up, really. That's simple as that in a phrase.
And like, I think one thing, I know you're an advocate of this as well. One thing I found when I was a white belt, that was a bit of a game changer for me, was drilling. Because I know you're a big advocate whenever you've taken a class, is if you're going to do takedown entries, don't do 10 different takedown entries. Do 10 of the same takedown once, and get the muscle memory for that attack. But yeah, I think what you described is, it's almost like my understanding of it. It's like a bit of a network. It's like every position's got a network of different directions you can go in,
Exactly.
different positional things. And I think in contrast to, say, when I was doing boxing, like obviously your footwork matters. But you've essentially got, a jab, a cross, a hook both sides, an overhand, an uppercut. You can put an angle on the uppercuts, or you can, check left hook. There's certain variations of them, but the attacks are pretty limited. The defenses, roll in over the shoulder, hands up, but in jiu-jitsu, you've almost got every position has got all those attacks, plus a few more, plus you can completely change position.
Endless.
Yeah, and it's like I always think of it. I play quite a bit of chess at home with my girlfriend. It's like you're thinking about 10 different things that are going on at once. If I like relieve a bit of pressure here, they're going to move over here. I think like the more I'm trying to find the balance between how much sparring should I do, how much training should I do, how much drilling should I do. But I think, like you say, you've got to just keep turning up. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah, and also the patience is a very big virtue for any person in anything in life. I wasn't patient. I'm not naturally patient. There are people that naturally patient. I'm not naturally patient, so I had to deal with that. I had to go through some hurdles. If you've been through some plateaus, mate, I've been through some plateaus in every belt. When I was a world champion black belt, I still didn't feel like I was a black belt, because there was so much that I didn't know, because there's so much to know. You know what I mean? And I was good on bringing things to what I was good at, because my network was well connected. Some people figure that network quicker than others. Marcelo Garcia, mate, he's like the ex-guard, and then, you know what I mean, those games that he did since when he was fortunate that he clicked beginning. Suddenly, by the time that he was a black belt, he was, mate, nobody could hold him, because he was so well connected on his network. They made his brothers, all this kind of stuff. But how can you improve if you only think about the end? That's when the patience comes. If you go to train to try to stop people out all the time, you're going to be limited. If everything goes that between beginning and until the top, that goes through how you expected, which can go so many different directions. Now, it's fun to submit someone. It's awesome. Is that the final goal, right? But when you have the patience to give time to also develop areas of control, when things goes out of control. How can you get that thing back to control? Create bases that I know that I can. If I could never hold someone in my guard, my first thing that I have to focus on is how can I hold someone for 10 seconds before I try to submit him. Because if I try to submit him, sometimes I get, sometimes I don't, and people start getting to know what you got, and then you're no longer going to submit him anymore if you don't have the control to give it another try. So once you find the control first, that allows you to secure people in your weight division or your level or a little bit above for long, then you know that I've got something that I can slow someone down. Then work out on how to branch out from there. And maybe you're going to discover submission that links, or maybe you're going to start giving a try another base that will be more effective, that with the knowledge of controlling that you start at first, when you link with that, you have another monster there. And then that's how it is you need to raise your army of weapons to as much as possible, to the point that I have an answer for each specific situation. And that's why I didn't feel as a black belt when I was already a world champ, because I was very good on here, very good on here, very good here, but I was completely rubbish here. And here, someone pulls me in the half guard. I had no clue what to do, because in my network, half guard wasn't connecting. Until I had to put time into it, deal with my ego, to don't go straight away to my go-to techniques, and try to develop with people that I know that I can beat, but they start giving me a very hard time on areas that I had to develop just so I can develop. And that's the thing. When you go to the academy to try to improve yourself, focus on you, you have a better chance to deal with the plateau in a small amount of time. Because if you go to the gym only to beat the others, you are focused on the other kind of game. I did that for a long time. I used to go to the gym to beat others so I can get recognition and get awarded my black blue belt. When this wasn't enough, I said, you know what? I'm going to train to be as good as I could ever be. And that means my ego was dealt in a better way, that I can give time to practice things that I wasn't that good. And then, because it wasn't no longer about beating others, it was about getting better. And then maybe 2-3 months of gray area, and suddenly go, oh, okay, at least I know how to handle, not fully, but a lot more. That gives me options when my A game doesn't work. I can go here because I can handle at least that 10 to 15 extra seconds that keeps me in the game. And then the clicks start coming, you know? That is weird, but that's the game. That's how I saw.
Definitely. And in that process of learning those techniques, you talk a lot when we train, or in conversations that we've had prior, about being uncomfortable, or being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And that leads me on to what I want to speak to you about next, which is overcoming adversity. Because I know your story as a sports athlete is fraught with adversity, and some of the craziest overcoming of adversity that I've ever heard. And yeah, I'd like you to share that story for people that haven't heard it.
Yeah, I think when I experience like situations, in jiu-jitsu, that, man, that's no way out. That's impossible to get out of here. And suddenly you learn that there is a way out. You go, hold on a second, I thought there was no way out, but there is. So even though now someone gave me the answer for that, even though I didn't know and it was given to me, the point is, I thought there was no way out at all. But actually, there is. So how can I backtrack? How can I reverse engineer things to the point that I can figure out the way out myself? And it all comes down to, on the beginning, right, in jiu-jitsu, we always focus on what each of us are doing. I push you, I want to sweep you, I want to pass your guard, and I want to do the movements that I learned to be able to do something about you. Is very selfish. It's all about I need to do what I want to do, which is right. But it's not the essential part. The essential part is I need to deal with what the opponent can do against what I want while I'm doing. The movement and the coordination in the direction of your execution is the minimum that you should have. Now, when you have that to a T, you got to then adapt according to what my opponent has to do against that while I'm doing it. So it's all about you try to progress at the same time limiting the progress of my opponent. If this is me attacking, or if this is me defending. If someone put me in a very bad position, the first instinct is get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. No, I don't want to give. No, it's all about I don't want to give, I want to get out. But if you only think about that and he blocks what I need to get out, I'm never going to get out. But when it comes down to accept, see again one more time, the acceptance of the scenario. You are in a bad place. If you don't accept that you are in a bad place, or if you want to just get out anyhow, you won't be successful. But once you understand, okay, cool, the guy got me in a very bad place, I accept. Okay, but before, I didn't want to be here in the first place, but I ended up here. How can I just go from where I was, from here? I didn't want to be here in the first place. He managed to get here when I didn't want him to get. Imagine how can I just get out? It's impossible, right? Otherwise, you'll never be on such a dominant position. So now it's like recognize he got me here, accept, and understand what the reason why he put you here, what's next from him. At first, if you don't know, look, feel, what is he doing next? What is his follow-up? He did the first move, the second move. Is it the end? Yes or no? If that was the end, this was too late. Next time, when this scenario happens, don't let the second part happen. But if it goes 1, 2, it's still not the end, okay. So what he needs to do next to be the end? If that thing never happened, the end will never be here. So you start kind of back engineering what the opponent has to do against me to get to the point that there's no way out anymore, right? So on that period, that transition, there's a lot of things that could go, because if I understand what he needs next and we equally fight against that specific point, the fight is about that simple. It's about that little thing, as long as you understand what he's fighting for. And for you to understand, you need to have been there a couple times, a few times, to recognize the common thing. Because that's what comes down to the answers. Take a person put you in a very bad situation. If I understand what his follow-up and I don't let that happen, we still engage.
I remember one class actually where you went through, we're doing escaping from the triangle, and it was like one of those aha moments for me where you're saying, well, if the triangle's here and there's no triangle here, you're trying, like, for you to end up like tapping in a triangle, there's steps. It's moving along a process. So every single step, you need to move. Need to try and block it, counter it, move against it to move it back along that journey.
Is that special?
Yeah. It just kind of like clicked for me.
That comes out to the patient, right? If I want to just get out now, you end up getting caught. If you want to submit now, you end up escaping.
Definitely.
That's the thing. It's the little.
You can't panic as well.
No.
And that's so on the note of adversity then, so what I was thinking we should run through the story of is your biggest rival, Jacare, and the story of those fights, how they went down, because it's such an unbelievable story that I think, for anybody that's listening to this podcast, I'd love for them to hear it. So take you on that journey.
That's the thing, right? For example, I was very fortunate to be very observing during my brought up. When I was bringing up, I was observing by the lesson that my dad was giving me, the lesson that my mom was giving me, the lessons that my grandma and from one side and grandfather to the other side and vice versa. The lessons that my granddad was used to my dad and my dad sharing. That's the importance of sharing. You know, I was learning a lot by seeing the lessons that people around me was having and taking conclusions by the consequence of those lessons. You know, like, and I remember someone told me that wise are those who learns from other people's mistake without having to go through them. And this gives me a very good click to, that's true, you know, because my dad told me not to do that. And because if I did it, something bad could happen. And then I started to recognize someone did it, and I saw the consequence. Oh, well, my dad was right. So I don't need to feel the consequence to learn that I don't have to, even though I feel so itchy to do it because it's like, I want to do it, you know, but my dad said no, but I really want to do. But this kind of thing, I start learning a lot from other people's mistake, right? And I'm talking about that because a lot of people say, oh, you can't do this. Some other people are saying, no, you cannot do this. And that's the fine line of your experience of what is possible or what's not possible by your experience that you have in life, right? I have seen, I've been always attracted to the sport. So I've seen that people, like in sports, people beating records. You know, we see like running, oh, the guy, this Olympics is beating records, but the other guy beat the record 4 years before, and then now there's another record that was, man, that was already impossible then. Now the guy is a lot more, and suddenly people overcoming the limits of themselves because they are giving all they can. I saw this in swimming, in the Ayrton Senna. I was someone that I as a tradition for our Sundays to watch the races. Ayrton Senna, man, like one day in Brazil, he was running on the rain with the dry tires, and they start getting dry, and he was shifting, like doing the wrong tires on the wrong, just to get time for don't go to the pit stop. And then his gear broke, and he only had the sixth gear, and he managed to win when everyone thought he couldn't. So I started, man, so that is a chance. If you know what you're doing, if you do it right, and then if you don't give up, what if it is just a gear broke? Tough shit. Sorry guys, gear broke, I'll stay. Impossible to win. You're never gonna find out. And I've always had that in me. I rather regret for something that I've done than things that I never done. So this kind of thing always put me in the situation that if I am doing something safe, I'm not in risk of life on anything. And who are you to tell me that I cannot do when my dad said to self-believe and carry on? With that mindset, I spoke a lot here, but it's just a little intro, you know? Because a lot of the people, when I start training, they have already they had like a complex of where we came from. Would be impossible to compete against the people for real because they already been doing that for so long. I go, why? What if I start getting to know what I'm doing and try to offset what they're expecting and play the game a little different so they don't deal with it how they expecting. Play a little bit outside of the curve. And that's why probably I end up being so creative of developing new things, because that was my mindset, because I didn't feel that I could beat others playing their game that they are already in a high level training there for so many years. If I'm start from a small group that newbies, but if I do slightly different and do something that they don't expect on that right moment, maybe I have a chance. And I was proving people things wrong. That's why Carlos Gracie gave me that answer. He said, like, there's something about. So things that I was applying and I tried to understand was making sense, and I was self-discovering myself. So when I was competing up until a brown belt, I got to a point, and I became one of the best training partners for Roger Gracie. But not because I had the same experience that he had. It's just because I was doing something completely different than what he used to deal with. So I could kind of puzzle him a little more than what people were doing the same thing that they expected and just fight against and just get through it. So I was intriguing with him. And that was proving the point, okay, so I'm doing the same thing but slightly different, and I'm confusing people, so that's a good plus. So I want to carry on developing, and that proved right. Jacare was the guy that the guy that when he came from brown belt to black belt, he went tapping all the world champions like nothing. He was a superhuman. You know, actually, I did a post yesterday about someone asking what was my toughest opponent. You know, Jacare was my toughest opponent by far, but not only mine, for many people, including Roger. And Roger is the greatest of all times, my best mate. So what happens is, I had the opportunity to be training Roger, and we develop each other to a very big, high level of professional in Jiu-Jitsu, right? Even though we were here in the UK. Roger, by the way, he was a guard player.
Okay. What was his go-to?
He was just close line.
Okay.
He was his go-to.
Yeah.
He became a passer training with me because I was a guard player.
I got you.
Do you know what I mean? So we kind of, and then I became a very good guard player, and he became bloody the best passer of all time because we have a good reference of each other, right? So then Jacare was the guy to beat, but I never been very athletic. Like I never been very strong. I used a lot of techniques. I used to play different, but I couldn't fight Jacare in the way that I could exchange the power and the technique that I have developed on my network wasn't enough to beat the technique that he had developed on his network. So his best pass was against my best guard, and it was always clashing, and I felt that I did see the end of the tunnel with him. The first time I competed against him was in 2003 as a brown belt, and then he just ripped my arm apart. And then, okay, next time was as a black belt. But look at this. Me and Roger, we're training, and Roger fighting against Jacare as a brown belt. And Roger was like back and forth with him. Roger's bigger, stronger, and he was, of course, an amazing fighter. And in 2004, there was the finals of the absolutes. Jacare versus Roger. And Roger was going to fight his weight division final, and me fight against Jacare in the final. And then Roger broke his arm on the absolute before the finals of the weight division. So basically, Roger took, even though Jacare won the fight with a broken arm, Jacare couldn't fight the final, so I didn't beat him. But I was a world champion. So that's why I was thinking, I'm a world champion, but Jacare wasn't here, right? And then when we fought against each other on the Worlds 2005, Jacare was back in the scene. And then he won. He beat me in the final. And he beat me in the third place. I got third in the absolute and second in the weight division at the Worlds. And it already put me in check again. I mean, oh man, the guys beat me, but I was getting close. I was by points. So I fought him 4 times and I even scored 1 point against him. You know what I mean? But I was getting better and better and better. And there appeared this opportunity for me to fight against him in 2011, right? So I had everything set. Okay, it's my opportunity now to fight him, right? And I remember that in 2010, in June, I suffered the accident that I fell on my head. I fell on my head, I got tetraplegic. And that fight was set to be fight in 2011. The time that I was feeling, okay, the last time that I fought him was in 2006, and that was 2011. I was already adult. I was like, okay, I'm 30 years old. I'm ready. And, already be developed my game. So when that match was set in 2011, I was so excited for it because it's the time that I could prove to myself that actually I can beat Jacare. And then the accident happened. My whole world went down. Like when I fell on my head in the MMA training, and my whole body shut down, no hurts, no pain, simply disconnect. It's the worst feeling that I ever had in my entire life. And I remember the first thing that came to my mind, because my oldest son, had just born in 2009. I thought, oh my God, I want to be able to pick up my kids because I wanted to be the father, the active father with my kids. And then the second thing came to my mind was like, Jacare, I'm in a fight. How can I do it? So up until then, since my first experience of Jacare, I had lost by submission. Getting harder, and I lost by points. And I lost by very tough points. And then I was getting better every time, even though I never even scored a point. So I was in that pursuit to try to prove to myself that I am capable to be the best guy in the world. Because I was getting closer, and I was learning. I was trying to adjust here and there, getting stronger. And then this happened. And that was the biggest challenge that I ever had. Because when I was told that I would never be able to fight again, I went to the first doctor. I did accept the answer. Second doctor, third doctor, all saying the same. Because I have 2 discs. That was the problem. And then I spoke to Kevin Lido, which was our physiotherapist and chiropractor in London, via Roger. He goes, I know this guy. Peter Hamlin is an amazing surgeon, a spinal surgeon. You need to talk to him. Got to him, he goes, I have put up one big guy back in the Premier League. I said, I like you. So we booked, listen, the accident was in June 2010. I spent 6 months trying to search the right person to do this surgery, because up until then I shouldn't be a fighter, a sportsman anymore. My world collapsed. So in December, I found Peter Hamlin on the 4th trial, 4th doctor. So already been 6 months without being training in my prime. 2009 was my best year so far. Then we booked the surgery for February 4th. The fight against Jacare was in September. So I had 8 months between the surgery and the fight. I had 6 months, 7, 8 months without training properly since the accident. So I had, after the surgery, I had to spend 4 months without training, but rehab to go back to how I could possibly, do you know what I mean? I had 4 months without just rehab to go back before the surgery, but already been 8 months without training. Then plus the rehab, plus the injury itself, and I had 4 months to train myself to be as good as I could possibly be to beat the guy that I never even scored a point against him in the past, And then that came down to a couple of things that's why I made the intro. Senna did things that people thought that would be impossible. Ronaldo, the phenomenon, I remember that he had a very big injury before the World Cup '98. He hurt his knee, 2002 actually. He ripped his ligament, the cruciate, and then he did a surgery 4 months before the World Cup. And everyone was saying that he's out, he's off. I mean, this injury is over, The World Cup is in 4 months. Is impossible. We lost our main player. Oh my God, oh my God. But then there was this guy from Rio called File. He's a physiotherapist. He said, I can get him back in. I just gonna do everything. That just follow me. Then he did all the rehab like how he should. Pow, 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 pow. By the time of the World Cup, he was back in the game. We were world champions, and Ronaldo was the highest scorer of the whole thing. So remember what I said: learning from observing, and if it's possible, if he made it possible, why can't I make it possible? Just because nobody knows my subject, but if he did something that was completely unique, he recovered. Why can't I? As long as I'm safe, as long as I have the right people with it, like Peter Hamley, Now I'm gonna be dealing with Jacare for the 5th time, but I never score a point. I'm like, hey, Senna did that, Michael Jordan did that. And like I start kind of having reference of people that were unique, that did something that nobody thought possible could be happen. And all I was thinking about was, but what if? What if? So shall I stop just because it's something that is impossible? Or shall I do what is on my position, on my control, to do as good as I could be, and check to see if I can? Am I going to be that pilot that has just one gear to finish the race for another 10 laps and say, oh, it's over? Or as long as it is running, I still going to give it a try until I cannot run anymore. So that was my mind, Oh, I had an injury, but in 4 months you won't be able to recover. But yeah, but, am I going to be the Ronaldo to stop? Sorry, guys, I'm out. Or I'm going to be the guy that's going to try to do it. Look, Neymar on the last World Cup, he had a very big injury, even though we didn't win. But what amazing recovery within 7 days. He was with the foot that big. He went back and made one of the best games that he had done in the whole World Cup. So that, together with the mindset that I learned training at Gracie Barra, with Roger, with Carlos Gracie Jr., with my teammates, that is all about your mind. If you focus and you do what is on your control to achieve something, impossible is nothing. Putting all together with my previous experiences by observing people around me and see that that is always a chance, never 0% a chance. I'll give it a try, because in my mind, the reason that I never stopped training Jiu-Jitsu when all my teammates stopped was because I used to think when I get to 40, I would be very frustrated for not carrying on, just thinking about that I could have done, So today, because of that mindset, I'm very proud that I gave my best. And yeah, in the end, I ended up beating Jacare after all the hurdles and difficulties. But everything was only possible because if you really believe and do what it takes, as long as you're in a safe zone, not when I say safe zone, that you're not putting your health into a situation that you might die or whatever. To be honest, there are people who does those things that's going to achieve the crazy stuff, right? But yeah, I chose the right people to be around. I chose the best doctor. I was reassured, and it was all down to me to do what it takes to get to the point. We got September 2011. It was the biggest fight of my life. I fought for 30 minutes, and I did something that nobody ever thought I could possibly do. And he didn't know about my neck, which was, for me, the neck thing, only I know how the limitations that I had, but I was so confident that I would be there. And then always I thought about was every single day up until that fight, I always think about was beating Jacare. And I think I proved the point that is always possible. It's not about what people tell you, it's about what you tell to yourself, because people will tell you you can, and people are going to tell you you can't. So you need to look inside and tell you whatever the voice you put in your heart and on your mind is the voice that's going to be right.
I love that story, man. Like,
It's a long one.
no, but it's a great one. Like when we sat down and spoke, and you shared that with me the first time, I was like, kind of welling up a little bit. I was like, it's absolutely crazy. From like what is almost your entire life is centered around being a sports person. You've sacrificed everything. You've gone to get the heights of the heights. You've got this opportunity to, prove to yourself and everybody that you can beat your biggest rival, and then to get hit with a bit of adversity. Not a bit. It's not like, like Ronaldo, knee injury, bad. There's going to be other World Cups. With fighting, there's only so many times that you can fight people and opportunities, and how often those come around. And there's also levels of severity of injuries. And when you're at the point where you're paralyzed and you can't feel anything, to then have the willpower and mindset to recover, overcome that, do a full rehabilitation, and then go back and compete at the highest level in a sport which is not like running up and down on a pitch. It's really physically demanding. And also jiu-jitsu, learning how to crank necks, choke people unconscious, break limbs. It's kind of playing with fire, but I just think it's such an amazing story, and it's so inspirational that I feel like this conversation would be incomplete without us visiting it. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, Joe. And to be honest, just for people who is listening, it wasn't. I like to say that you gotta be courageous, but without being reckless. Too. When that paralyzation happened to me, wasn't my first injury. You know what I'm saying? That scenario of the World Cup with Ronaldo stuck with me, because that was something that was proven being possible, that a large majority of the people believe that wouldn't be possible, and he made it possible, and they still be on top of the game. Right? Now, I remember my first ever injury was on my knee. I twisted my knee, I was a blue belt, and I remember that I couldn't lift my leg out of the floor because my knee would bend. I thought that was it. My career was over. Oh my God, this is crazy. Like I cannot lift. If I cannot lift my leg, how can I lift someone else? And sweep. How can I? And then and then you start to understand the beauty of the structure of your body. You start to understand that if you do the physiotherapy with the right way, still developing, physiotherapy still develop now. Imagine 20 years ago. And then you start seeing these new ways of doing things that if back in the day, if you do something and you put a gypsum on your arm and stay for 2 months, now you fix a problem, but now you're going to have to spend another month, 2 months to rehabilitate because it was without moving. So I start to recognize that our body is crazy unique, and it's like the power of what our regeneration is. If you do the right thing, try to keep on moving, and then you start connecting things. Like when you have a little injury, or if you are ill and you stay in bed for too long, it's much harder to come back, get out of the bed. And then you start associating with people. When some people get very old, they stop exercising because it hurts here, hurts there. And then they stop in bed. Then they cannot get out of the bed forever, otherwise until they die. And you start correlating those things that you got to keep on moving, because pain is one thing that we got to learn in Jiu-Jitsu. We have more resilience with pain for experience. I had the injuries in my shoulder, and then I learned with that first injury, my knee, I learned to do things completely different to protect my knee. At the same time, I started developing other areas because you get limited by your own injury. So I had that build of understanding throughout my journey as an athlete, as a sports athlete, as a contact sport athlete with little injuries, learning from others, people that had injuries and still come back to activities. And that kind of stuff was build my mind to the point that I have the self-belief, even though it's something very critical, unique, that never happened to me, but I was, what if? Because I already had proof to myself that was possible from that knee, from the other surgery on my knee, or the surgery on my shoulder, and I'd be back and going compete at a higher level. I was with less fear, because you end up fearing the unknown, right? When you already been through, I was fortunate enough to learn from that specific scenario that happened with other people that there was a result. Okay, he could make it. And little scenarios happened to me, and I was led by that inspired story that I ended up being an inspired story for others.
Definitely. And like,
You get what I'm saying?
oh, 100%, yeah. And I think what you were saying about your body's capabilities and the importance of keeping your body active really resonates. And like, I've always through my life tried to be proactive in exercise, whether that involves running. I've like done a lot of running, whether that involves fighting training or playing a bit of football. I've always tried to be active in my life. But one thing that I did this year as a New Year's resolution, before I took up Jiu-Jitsu, just to jump back slightly, before I took up Jiu-Jitsu, I got really into running. About 2017-18, I basically turned into Forrest Gump. Did 4 half marathons, 2 marathons, all in the space of about 2 or 3 years. It took a bit of a toll on my body. And then last year when I took up Jiu-Jitsu, or just before last year, one of my objectives was I want to set myself a big physical goal and want to run an ultra marathon. But Jiu-Jitsu just kind of got a hold of me last year, and I loved it. And I was training like 5-6 times a week, or trying to get at least 5-6 hours in a week. And I was struggling to find the time for running. But this year I do want to do the ultra marathon, because like you described, I think you don't want to sit later in your life and think, I've missed the boat to do that. So I really want to do an ultra marathon, and we'll be doing one later this year, and then a triathlon, Ironman the year after. That's my plan.
That's cool.
But that activity it really like clicked with me this only a couple of weeks ago, really, because I haven't ran loads throughout last year. My body wasn't acclimatized to it. We had a shoot in New York, and I went out. I was a bit jet lagged. I was getting up at like 5 o'clock in the morning because my body was all fucked up with the time. And I got up one morning, and it was like 5 a.m. It's like, I'm just going to go to Central Park for a run. And I ran about 5-6 miles, which I could usually do like no problem.
It's a lot for me.
Right? Yeah, like, typically do that no problem. But then later that day, everything hurt, and the following day, and then I got a bit run down. So I thought to myself this year, okay, if I'm going to do this ultra marathon, I need to get my body back acclimatized to running. So what I'm going to do is commit. I'm going to have no booze for January, and I'm going to run every day. So first week, I'm going to run 2 miles every day. Then the next week, 3 miles every day. Third week, 4 miles. Fourth week, 5 miles. Total miles was about 110 miles through the month, just progressively building it up. And it was really tough to do.
The first week, I bet, was a nightmare.
You know what? The first week, because it was the 2 miles, it didn't feel too bad. It was when you were going out doing like the 5. What I find was like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was hard. And then the rest of the week was easy because your body was like acclimatized into that slight distance increase. But the takeaway from me after the month, I was like, well, I can't run every day because I did feel completely fucked afterwards. And you need to recover. But what was a massive takeaway was be active every day.
Yes.
So now I've got a schedule, even if it means going and doing like a 3-mile walk, go down to the reservoir and clear your head and just do like a walk and go and move every day.
Of course, avoid escalators.
Yeah.
Walk the steps.
Yeah. Just move. Like, just make some conscious effort every day, whether it's I do a training session in Jiu-Jitsu, or I go for a run, or sometimes I'll do both in a day, or even just a walk. That constant, keeping your body constantly active, keeps your body fresh.
Like, even though you're going to be sore, what is this soreness? Listen, if your body hurts, it's because you're alive. but that's not a worse pain than when your body is weak and you cannot do things because your body hurts.
100%.
When you're sore for active activity, your body is sore, but your body has the structure that allow you to do things, and the pain is slightly more enjoyable.
Right, Braulio, we've been chatting for a while. I knew this would happen, but I'm all for it. I've got a couple of final questions that I want to ask you. So the name of this podcast is Keeping Focus. Throughout your journey to success, in all of its various ups and downs, from sports success to business success, because I know you have various fingers in pies of businesses as well. How have you kept focus?
Yes, I mean, to focus sometimes can be really challenging if you keep yourself thinking only on the final destination. I think when you get used to focus on the step by step, just to do something slightly better and understand that things that are real don't come fast. When you understand the patience, it's easier to be more focused, because a lot of people mistake the focus with the results they're expecting, and that can be a little bit disheartening when you put the focus on the too far up away from what you can reach, and then when the results of your movements or whatever you're doing is not as expected, you get a little disheartened, and then you lose focus. You know what I mean? If you can focus on what is on your means and do as good as you could be, and if you are mentally decided that what you're doing is good, that you like doing it, it's like your marathon. You like running, you like doing things. So what are you going to do? You're gonna do your bloody marathon and the first week back home, you're gonna break your body, and then you maybe gonna be focused for that to do as far as you can on the first week, but then how can you do it again if you went too far? You know what I mean? It's about setting achievable goals and focus on by being honest and accept the scenario. You gotta accept on the situation that you're not running as much as you were running before. If you don't accept that, you cannot get back successfully to how you were before, because you will think, I'm gonna start doing like I did before. You're gonna break your body, right? So that's the thing. Accept the scenario and do everything that on your own means, and keep with the direction of trying to self-improve. It doesn't matter what you do, and that will help you to get your focus, because as long as you're not stopping, as long as you try, figure it out, then you're going to have to figure out your balance. It's going to be 5 miles the balance. It's going to be 4 miles the balance. One thing is for sure, 0 mile is not going to be the answer. Do you know what I mean? It's some people, like, for example, when I start training for that 4 months fight against Jeff Correct, I couldn't even do 1 mile. I had to do 200 meters, but I did something that was on my understanding of my limitations. Be honest with yourself, accept the situation, and try to be slightly better, to the point that if you can push a little further, and then you're going to see the consequence. If you push a little further, and then you're going to realize the consequences that made me be too in a situation that I cannot go how I wanted to do, or I can't do what I wanted to do. Then you start, that was too much. So next week, I'll do it on Tuesday and Thursday instead, because that was too much. So you build yourself. All the focus is to try to be better than yesterday, and you try to figure out your own balance, because everyone is different. And that's why you need to accept yourself the way that you are. You cannot try to run I cannot try to run the way that you run, Joe, because I am Braulio. And if I keep measuring myself by how you do, my focus is going to be hard to get, because I'm going to get frustrated. And I'm going to get disheartened because, oh man, I can't do that. But we are here not for the destination. We are here for the journey. And if your journey is progressively and you figure out to tweak the points that needs to be so your journey become enjoyable, so you can enjoy the journey, the destination will become a consequence,
Beautiful. Final question, right? So, as a filmmaker, what I'm always curious to understand is what is your favorite film and why? Because I think it tells you a little something about somebody.
I've always loved it. Gladiator.
Okay.
Is a story. I love this story because it's real, shows the importance of the drive, what family is about for you, that can drive you, give you the motivation needed, and also the end is not necessarily always a happy end, and I like the Gladiator for the fact of the picture. Of course, I love the imagery. I know there was a lot of revenge that was inspired by what happened to he felt the scenario that he unjustified because of what happened, but there was a lot of loyalty. There was like when you stand your ground, you do what you think is best, you get the recognition, by the king, for example. The king decided to put him as then the son, and sometimes life brings you things that you not expect, as long as you try to keep your principles, which is your honor, which was like the strength and honor was on the case, like the integrity. So overall, I like that because of that, and plus he's a warrior, and then we are hoping for the best, but it is what it is. I like because of the reality of the things are not necessarily how we happy, but what drives you is your values.
Beautiful. Braulio, thank you so much for taking time out to come and do this podcast. It's been so great from my perspective just to get to know you over the last 18 months and become friends with you. I know we've hung out a lot. You've inspired me so much, and you do that across the world with so many different people for your athletic achievements and just being the kind of guy that you are. I really appreciate and value you coming down in your friendship, and until next time, because we will do we'll do another podcast in the future, man.
I know I can talk too much. Sometimes I get a little bit mixed up with my whole timeline, but it's it's likewise, Joe. Thank you very much for for everything. Since when you start connecting in a more personal level, I got to understand a lot the reason why you are so successful in things that you're doing, and it's been great sharing and learning, and being part of each other's journey. And this is just the beginning. There's a lot to come.
I know.
That's so
yes, brother. Appreciate that.
Yes, that's good.